class. Welcome to your reading lesson for Wednesday, April 15th. We are continuing with our thinking from yesterday. So if you didn't watch yesterday's video yet, you probably should. Now, in that video, we learned about what metacognition is and why it's important to becoming a real reader. So let's review. First off, when you read a text, which is anything, it's the author's words, anything that you read, you can't just look at the words and say the words. You must also think. Now, to become a really good reader, you have to think about your thinking, and that is where the big word metacognition comes in. Now, you don't even notice that you think about your thinking, but right now, as a student, you really do have to take a little bit of time to think about your thinking. You have to notice, am I thinking, or do I get done with the story and I can't even answer basic questions about it or tell someone about the story because I really wasn't thinking. I was just fake reading. Remember that from yesterday? Fake reading is when you just look at the words or say the words and nothing goes on inside your brain. You've got to be thinking. Now, I'm going to show you a few metacognition prompts that were on our video yesterday. We saw more than this. But again, metacognition over here is when you are thinking about your thinking. And some of these were in our packets this year, and some of these were new, and I really like that I pictured. We didn't have that in our packets this week. So, I'm going to be reading you a story, and while I read, I'm going to be stopping and letting you know what metacognition things I'm noticing, where I'm thinking about what I'm thinking, and then I'm going to tell you out loud. Okay, there's I think, I noticed, I pictured, I feel, it reminds me of, and I wonder. I feel like I use the I wonder a whole lot. Okay, sorry, my screen timed out. You saw my finger up there doing something weird. All right, now, this book, Harlem, written by Walter Dean Myers, and if you've been reading along with us, Jack always calls him Mr. Walter Dean Myers, and the pictures are by Christopher Myers, who also got mentioned in the story of I Hate That Cat. It's an award-winning book. Now, the whole book is one poem stretched out with pictures to become a picture book, so I'll be showing you the pictures. And again, this book was given to us by Ella G's family. And we're going to use it now because this was our poetry month. Okay. The dedication is to the memory of my foster parents, Herbert and Florence Dean. And then from Christopher, who's his son, he dedicated it to Mom and Dad because I like you people. I thought that was kind of funny. All right. They took to the road in Waycross, Georgia, skipped over the tracks in East St. Louis, took the bus from Holly Springs, hitched a ride from G's Bend, took the long way through Memphis, the third deck down from Trinidad, a wrench of heart from Goree Island, a wrench of heart from Goree Island, to a place called Harlem. Now, there's no pictures. My thinking here is I noticed that they took a long trip. I'm thinking that they have moved and from Georgia down south up to Harlem, which I know is in New York. So they must have, I'm picturing, and there's that I'm picturing they took a trip up the East Coast, thinking of a map in my head. And then here is a picture with no words. Harlem was a promise of a better life, of a place where a man didn't have to know his place simply because he was black. And I'm thinking from the South was where a lot more trouble was, and they moved up north because the North was a little bit more open-minded towards African Americans. They brought a call, a song, first heard in the villages of Ghana, Mali, Senegal. calls and songs and shouts, heavy-hearted tambourine rhythms, loosed in the hard city like a scream torn from the throat of an ancient clarinet. A new sound, raucous and sassy, cascading over the asphalt village, breaking against the black sky over 125 Street, announcing Hallelujah, riffing past resolution. I'm noticing a lot of high-spirited, seems very joyful and proud. And then a little bit when they started naming the countries in Africa, it reminded me of my trip there, because I just went. So a little bit, it doesn't even always, your metacognition doesn't always have to go with the story directly. Things you already know and experiences you have can really help you out as a reader. There it goes again. Yellow, tan, brown, black, red, green, gray, bright. Colors loud enough to be heard, light on asphalt streets. Sun yellow shirts on burnt umber bodies, demanding to be heard, seen, sending out warriors. From streets that know to be morning, still as a lone radio tells us how Jack Johnson, Joe Louis, Sugar Ray is doing with our hopes. I'm noticing that he named some very prominent, famous African-American figures, and he says holding their hopes, kind of showing their community what they could aspire to be. We hope, we pray, our black skins reflecting the face of God in storefront temples. Jive and Jehovah artists lay out the human canvas, the mood indigo. So he's seeing himself reflected in storefronts, and so that's making me think that this is a community that's very African-American friendly. There's a lot of African-American influence, so it's a feel-good place for our character. A chorus of summer herbs, of mangoes and barbecue, of perfumed sisters, hips strutting past fried fish joints on Lenox Avenue in steamy August. Are you feeling the summer? A carnival of children people the daytime streets, ring-a-levio warriors, stickball heroes, hide-and-seek knights and ladies waiting to sing their own sweet songs, living out their own slam-dunk dreams, listening for the coming of the blues. So I'm just picturing people having a great time in the summer, doing all the activities that are very familiar to me too. A weary blues that Langston knew and County sung, a river of blues where Du Bois waited and Baldwin preached. There is lilt, tempo, cadence, a language of darkness, darkness known, darkness sharpened at Minton's, darkness lightened at the Cotton Club, sent flying from Abyssinian Baptist to the Apollo. Now this one I think would be hard for students to understand without an adult, because there's a lot of references to places in New York, and maybe you can catch some of the music references. So again, on this page, the whole metacognition and thinking while I'm reading would let me know they're talking about music. The Uptown A rattles past 110th Street, unreal to real, relaxing the soul. Shango and Jesus, Asante and Mende, one people, 100 different people, huddled masses, and crowded dreams. Looks like they're in the subway. Squares, blocks, bricks, fat, round woman in a rectangle, Sunday night gospel. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. Caught by a full-lipped, full-hipped, saint washing collard greens in a cracked porcelain sink, backing up Lady Day on the radio. so black and blue, patting a wide foot outside the too hot walk-up. Boy, you ought to find the guy who told you you could play some checkers, 'cause he's done lied to you. Cracked reed, soprano, sax laughter floats over a fleet of funeral cars. So I'm picturing on the street, somebody's playing the saxophone, but at the same time, then now we see that there's a funeral procession coming. Now again, because this book is a poem, it doesn't necessarily get set up with a beginning, middle, and end, because poems don't function necessarily that way. It's more rhythmic and feeling and imagery. In Harlem, sparrows sit on fire escapes outside of rent parties to learn the tunes. In Harlem, the wind doesn't blow past Smalls. It stops to listen to the sounds. Serious business, a poem rhapsody tripping along Rivers Row, not getting its metric feet soiled over the well-swept walks, hustling through the hard rain at 2 o'clock in the morning to its next gig. Continuing, I'm thinking, man, music is so important to this community in Harlem. A huddle of horns, a tinkle of glass, a note handed down from Marcus to Malcolm to a brother, too bad and too cool to give his name. On that one, I'd think, I'd have to wait to see what's coming up to see what that was all about. I can just tell a note's been passed, but And again, it's a poem, so they might not even explain it. Sometimes despair makes the stoop shudder. Sometimes there are endless depths of pain singing a cappella on the street corners. And sometimes not. So just like all life, there can be pain, and then sometimes there's not. Sometimes it's just an artist looking into a mirror, painting a portrait of his own heart. Place, sound, celebration, memories of feelings of place. A journey on the A train that started on the banks of the Niger and has not ended. So I noticed that he made the reference back to Africa, back to a country in Africa, and he's saying that the journey of the people began there, and he's saying it's continuing on the A train in New York. So it's just, I feel like he's bringing in history into the current. Harlem. Okay. Now, I said a whole lot of these during it, but just to remind you that while you're reading right now as a student, you really need to be thinking about your thinking or using metacognition. And then when you become a very, very fluent reader, you will think while you read, and you don't have to think about thinking all the time. But right now, you're training your brain. So yesterday, I had included some worksheets. Oh, I thought it stopped recording. It did not. Thank goodness. Sorry for the pause. Okay, back to it. I had included some worksheets yesterday that you could use. The one is the one I sent home, I think, in your packet for the first week before spring break. It is the one that we had in all of our independent reading and station packets this year. I had also sent home a copy of the Reading is Thinking for Fiction and the Reading is Thinking for Nonfiction. Now, there's only one copy, but you can always look at the spaces to help remind you of what kind of thinking you should be doing that can help you become a real reader. No more fake reading, right? Miss Hennig and Miss Stroman will love that you're real readers next year. All right, so again, these, you can look at the slides from yesterday's presentation to remind you, but from now on, I really want you thinking about your thinking. Oh, yeah, thinking about your thinking and becoming real readers, because then that makes reading all the more worthwhile. What's the point if you don't know what you read, right? And Friday, you're going to be applying that because you're going to have questions, kind of like a quiz to go with your reading, just to see if you're thinking about it and able to answer questions. And you can answer questions if you think while you read. Bye, guys.